Hi, my name is Clare and I'm the mother of 3 teenagers with FASD.
I'm Jessica, a PhD researcher specialising in educational interventions for children with FASD.
And together we are the hosts of Spotlight on FASD, the UK's first podcast dedicated to shining a spotlight on fetal alcohol spectrum disorders.
FASD is a condition caused by prenatal alcohol exposure that affects hundreds of thousands of children across the UK.
And we're here to bring these conversations out of the shadows and make sure that no one living with FASD feels alone. Hi, welcome back to Spotlight on FASD. This week, I'm going to be sharing a lovely conversation that I was lucky enough to be invited to join in with my fellow female podcasters across the pond, Robbie from the podcast FASD Family Life and Natalie from the podcast FASD Hope. So I hope you enjoy it. It's just a lovely conversation about motherhood, navigating the world of FASD, and I hope that you enjoy it, and we'll speak to you soon.
Hello, welcome to FASD Family Life. I've got my wonderful friends with me today, and they are mama bears, fierce advocates, and podcasters in this world of FASD. We are the Women of FASD Podcasting, and today we are just doing real talk, real lives, and we're going to get after it. Right now, I'm going to say, hey, Claire, how has hurricane season been for you, metaphorically?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hurricane season, so there'll be a lot of people listening to that thinking, I didn't think they had hurricanes in the UK. Well, you do if you're in a family with FASD, yeah, you do. Hurricane season for us is the run up to Christmas, New Year, and then my 3 kids' birthdays, all in quick succession. And it is just an overload of everything. And this year has actually been incredible. We're not out of it yet. Probably got one tiny little one left. Probably going to be more of just a few windy days, maybe. That's what I'm hoping for. But it has been remarkable. And it has filled me with hope. It has exhausted me to the point where I could just stop mid-sentence now and go to sleep in about 3 seconds flat.
So true.
But when you can see that it's paying off, you just pull that strength from somewhere. So, it has been, I think it's awful in some respects to think that you need to be braced for Christmas. You need to be braced for New Year, braced for birthdays, because as a mother, they're the times that you just think, oh, this is lovely. This is the highlight of parenthood. All these lovely big Christmas Day and family gatherings and birthdays. Oh no, not in our world, not for our kids. It's they are the ones who find it difficult. So in turn, it's difficult for us to navigate them through that. And I think for years I didn't realize it was happening, other than this mindset of, I can't believe how they've behaved. This big birthday party, all of these people here. And when I look back now, knowing what I know, I think, I don't know how you survived. I don't know how you actually survived. You were so idiotic in some of the things you put your kids through, thinking that this is what you did and this is what everyone else is doing at school, so we've got to do this. And thinking, why can't my kids cope with this? So I think I have paid back. I've pruned and pruned and pruned, and I've become ruthless and fearless. And probably so tired that it's reached the point where I think, I really don't care what anybody thinks about what I'm doing, because this is survival. This is survival. And what for a few years has been survival and making the best of a situation, this year turned into utter joy. Just utter joy. It was the most gorgeous time. I think because it was so unexpected, and it's just made me really realise that if you keep chipping away and you feel like you might not be getting anywhere, follow your gut, keep chipping away, and all of a sudden when it's totally unexpected, and I think the key, what I found was I had everything planned for Christmas. So Christmas Day in particular, I had everything planned. for how we've done it the last 4 years, which is very, very low key. No big Christmas dinner. We have pancakes for Christmas dinner. And nobody is expected. If people don't want to come out of the room, they don't come out of the room. Just however we get through that day, we'll get through that day. And I went into it with that plan in mind, and it was actually 2 out of 3 of the kids who said, are we having Christmas dinner? Are we going to do, can we have pancakes now and then can we have like a real Christmas dinner later? Yes. Thankfully I was prepared for that, so I ended up sitting eating Christmas dinner when none of it was planned. I didn't expect any of it, and I think that made it even nicer, that it was absolutely there was no pressure at all from me. And it's taken me a long time of grieving. We touched on that before we hit record. It's taken a long time of grieving, but also having the patience to think it doesn't really matter what the outcome is. I know I'm doing the right thing, and the right outcome, like, it's kind of letting go of the outcome, but just knowing that I'm going at a pace that they need and being led by them. And it's not me being an indulgent parent at all, but it can sometimes really look like that. An example of where you might think, in the past, grandparents might have called or extended family might have called to the house and wanting to be making a big fuss on Christmas Day. And, if you do manage to force whoever's struggling out of the bedroom, because that's what they should do, because that's respectful and they're your grandparents, and this is what you should do. And this is how me feeling this, not that would ever come from my parents. But now I have been so fierce with my boundaries on their behalf that there's just no expectation from anyone. And because what used to make me uncomfortable and make me sad was, where's is he not coming down? Where is he? Where is he? Was he? Is he not coming down? Oh. And that used to just have a big knot in my stomach and thinking like, where now my family have come to know that whatever it is that I'm doing, it is without question what my kids need at that time, and they just go with it. But that's taken us a good decade to get to.
I was just thinking that sounds like a decade's worth of work.
It has been day in, day out, hour by hour, relentless. And I can't remember, a winter, so January, February, where I haven't felt physically ill with exhaustion, physically ill. And it's just lovely. And I know you think, well, is that to be celebrated? The fact that you're not physically ill and on your knees? Yes, it is. Because that's where I've been for years and years and years. And that's not to say that, so in general, hurricane season has been very mild, very, very mild. But I will absolutely be braced next year. I'm not going to rest on my laurels. I'll be braced next year. I think this year up front, I learned so much from last year, which was really, really, really difficult. And I put them through a lot, not realising it. And that's sometimes hard, I think, when you're in our line of work, and I pride myself in knowing a lot. And then to realise that I've been putting them in a really difficult situation and not realising it. So this year, there was absolutely no expectation of anyone to wait until Christmas Day for presents. If it felt like it was becoming a bit of a challenge. And it was only kind of, I think it was Christmas Eve, one of my biggest boy, he got his main present, and he was able to talk to me about the fact that how last year it had been so much more difficult and he couldn't cope with the pressure of the run up to knowing he's getting his gaming PC, and that's just what he was desperate to be on it. And this time it was a new iPhone, and we had the conversation, and I just said, It's insured. We know that you never smash it on purpose, ever. If it gets smashed, it gets smashed. It's insured. We'll sort it. So, you know, because there's this, you would all, if you ever hand them anything new, you'll go, I'm going to really try not to break this.
Oh.
And that is like somebody with epilepsy saying, I'm going to really try not to have a seizure.
Yes.
I'd really try my best not to let you down. And your response would be, that is never letting me down. You would never let me down. You make yourself ill if you're trying to bottle all that inside. And it's, you know, I think, you know, a few years ago, I didn't feel that way. And I did feel, I can't believe how ungrateful you are. Yeah. You've smashed another phone. You've smashed another iPad. You've smashed your television. Smashed your brother's head. You know, all of that. But now I understand them so much better. And I think, you know, I'm not going to lie though. I have had to hand my entire life over to them. My entire life, every aspect of it, every waking moment. I've had to hand it all over to them. So what I have noticed is, yes, there's been huge wins and huge improvements, but this probably at least the last 6 months has meant not a second of respite time for me, not a minute, not an overnight to myself, not a full night's sleep, nothing. And in the past, I think I used to get really quite resentful. I'm going to be perfectly honest. I used to get really resentful about that. But actually, I think, and I don't know, you know, when you've got a brand new baby, and at first they're a bit, when you're not getting anything back, it's a little bit more difficult. I think it's very similar to that. I'm starting to see how they are benefiting from this intense intervention that I'm able to give them constantly. And so I think, you know, if I calculate this right, you know, what would I rather do? Hand over everything now for a few years to be able to have some time in the future that they're not so dependent on me, or think, no, I want my life to myself. I need some time to myself, and have time away from them, knowing that they're going to be taking 4 steps back each time, even though we've just taken 10 steps forwards together. So I think I've made my peace with that, and maybe that's played a huge part in why hurricane season was as smooth as it was.
Yes, absolutely. I connect with that so much, but we'll save me for later. We have Natalie Vecchione here from FASD Hope. Natalie, how's it going, Mama?
So thank you for having me, ladies. It's wonderful to be with you. And we are 2 months in the interdependence experiment. And it's interesting, Claire, I'm hearing everything you're saying, and it's interesting because that was us for so many years, just, you know, creating that safety around the triggers, around the seasons and everything. And we were planning on building the tiny house and everything. And then our son said, no, I don't want to live here anymore. And so we were talking about plot twists before we started recording. And this was last fall. He was like, I don't want to live here anymore. I don't want to be a carpentry apprentice. So we're like, okay, pivot. Here we go. And we pivoted, and he is living in an apartment less than an hour from here with his best friend and his best friend's brother, and who are both they're very FASD understanding. They one of them has a neurodiversity as well, and they're understanding. I don't think I could have asked for better roommates for our son. But he's experiencing life now, and life is hard. And when you go from those late teens to, you know, he'll be 20 this year. And we were talking, there's that grief of, okay, I'm not able to do this, or I can't do this. And he's learning that. And even though he's not living at home, it's funny because everybody asks, how is it? What's it like? Not, you know, and I wish I could say it's respite, but it depends on the day. Some days you wake up and there have been no FaceTimes or calls in the middle of the night, and you're like, okay, that's good. And then some days, like, the past few days, it's like you don't make it through the night without 3 FaceTimes or 3 calls. And I used to call it hostage negotiation, where you're like negotiating with their brain, saying, okay, this is, you're trying to just talk them through that hurricane, like Claire's saying. You're trying to talk them through that storm. And so some days have been beautiful. And Claire, like you've said, my husband reminds me to embrace and celebrate those unexpected victories. And we're doing that, and we're having those. So I know that that's good. And then some days I feel like we're taking 5 steps backwards. However, he's made more progress in the past 2 months than he has in like the past 3 years. He is working for a company that's extremely accommodating. They have put so many accommodations in place, and he loves when his brain lets him go there. And I'm just going to say it just like that, because that's really how it is. When his brain lets him go to work, it's fantastic. They support him. He loves it. He's helpful. He's getting, praise and compliments. However, like today and other days, there's days where his brain just, nope, not going to do it today. And that's where we've created this bubble, like Claire said, but that's where I worry, okay, is he going to lose his job because his brain's not going to let him go to work today? And that's where I, like Claire, I have to say, okay, you know what? I got to have hope, and I got to push through this, and I'm going to learn from this. So we're at, like, if this were a video game, we're like at level 2 or level 3, we're up a level, but, the level's hard, and, okay, more's at stake. Like, okay, rent, living, food, working. So I think for us, these past 2 months have had a lot of unexpected victories, and I've celebrated them. And we know, the 3 of us, and Jessica knows also, that when you're in this FASD community, the victories we celebrate are much different than the neurotypical victories, so we have to recognize those victories as they happen. So it's been a big learning experience for me. Today I'm just really tired because we just very tough night. And again, the old me, listening to Claire talk, the me of a decade ago would have been like, oh, well, he's just going to have to blah, blah, blah. No, you still have to accommodate when they're not home. You still have to put those supportive measures in place. I think one of the things that I've learned, just to give everybody a heads up, if your kid is ready to have like an interdependent launch, and Robbie, I know you definitely have probably experienced this, when they're out of the house and when you have those days that you can breathe, like you can take a breath rather than gulp a breath. Those I like to call them those brainstorms. When they happen, maybe it's just because I'm old, but it seems like it like hits you harder. I'm like, I physically, like Claire said, I physically hurt from that, So I don't know if it's maybe because, your child is out of the house and then something unexpected comes along. It's like, we got to drop everything. And so I don't know if that's harder than living in it every day and not having the break, because when you have the break, it's like, this is what it feels like. And then bam, you face plant into something and it's painful. So
I could imagine that, because I'm trying to picture that, and it's like you're constantly in high alert, so you're constantly in your adrenaline, and that's your comfort zone, and that's where you are, and you fire on all cylinders there. It's completely unhealthy, it's completely unsustainable. However, it's where we live.
Yes. I
can just imagine how exhausted it's going to feel. The adrenaline dropping, and no, nothing's gone catastrophically wrong, and then it has.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I might rather be constantly in the highest, to be honest.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can speak to, that sudden plot twist when, you've done the hard work and then something dramatic happens. And then you get triggered right back to your previous trauma responses. And that's that adrenaline kick in, and that's your brain firing on all 12 cylinders at the same time. And you're working the problem, and you're just going, all of a sudden you were in rest state, and now you're in my house is on fire state, and I've got to save everything. That's very disorienting. I've been there, and living in panic like that is so unhealthy. And really, that's when we sometimes too will make rash, or maybe it's just me, make rash decisions that send everybody else a little crazy. I've done that kind of thing where I get a trauma response back from something that happened 10 years ago. And then my body, without me recognizing, my body and brain went into executing everything I needed to execute 10 years ago, when that was a right fit then, and it's not a right fit now. What I'm hearing from both of you is, holy man, this is a lot of hard work every single day. And it is, and I recognize that. And safety measures upon safety measures, and then still the cat gets through the fence to protect our kids, to give them some time to grow and to mature, because we know there's growth, we know there's maturity, but we also know it's about a decade behind. So that's the long view. Have you had the experience where, you've got your kid in the right setting? Maybe it's the accommodations at school and it's a good fit, or the accommodations at work or in a sports team, and you see where your kid is. And then do you have a grief moment? I was shocked by a grief moment I had, and that's what sparked me to email you both and invite you to the podcast is, what do you do when you feel that grief? For me, share a little bit what it was is, my son is very athletic, and he's a young teen, and he can no longer, he's physically capable of being on an elite soccer team or football team, as you'd say in the UK. He's capable of being on an elite team. However, his brain isn't that reliable for him. And he's also physically exhausted. So he can't actually stay up late enough at night to be on the team because he can't make the practices. So we missed soccer for a few years, which is really difficult because that's his identity. That's where he finds pride. I found a place for him within the Special Olympics community, which is beautiful. And I'm so grateful. And last week I sat there in the stands watching him participate in this community, and I felt sad. Have you all been there? Natalie, shaking your head. Natalie, go ahead.
Yes. I sat in on my son's job interview, and the store manager's amazing and explained her. She understands neurodiversity, and explaining to her, listening to him advocate for himself and explaining to her and thinking, I should be so excited right now. And I was, but at the same time, I was feeling grief. Like, this is just the beginning, and I felt like, I think a lot of it too is that we, unfortunately, our society just, no matter where you are in the earth, that our societies tend to just focus on that. Well, this is the typical celebration. This is what everybody wants to do, that kind of thing. And this is, hey, graduated from high school, college, whatever. And I'm thinking he got his first real job. And yet I have to be here, to make sure that he is sharing what his needs are. So, yeah, I have experienced that. And I think also experiencing that shortly after he finished homeschool, maybe a year after he finished homeschool, just seeing all of his friends either launch into the military or into college or whatever, and him being here in that stall mode, that was really hard. Now he's not in that stall mode, but again, his brain, like you said, Robbie, his brain, like for today, for example, his brain he couldn't go to work today. His brain and his body, because I'm glad you bring this up, Robbie, because I know all three of us, we talk about this. We talk about the brain component of this diagnosis of FASD, but we also recognize there are over 400 medical conditions that go with it. And that's something we grieve too. Like, not only was I grieving that his brain wouldn't let him go to work today, but his body wouldn't, because he didn't get any sleep last night. And he was able to communicate it to his boss, and they were understanding. They said, no problem, come in on your next day, which again, I'm so thankful for. But then I have that bittersweet grief of, oh, you know, why?
Or
So,
is this what it's going to be?
Yeah.
It's like you look at it and go, oh, is this what it's going to be? I'm at a beginning stage with this adolescent and in this Special Olympics, which I also celebrate, that I think we might have a community here for a long, long time. So that's hopeful. And you are at the beginning of this early adulthood. And we know, all of us know from speaking with adults who have FASD, and I'm talking those who are 30 and plus, like they're standing pretty good on their own. Like they still have supports, but they're far more competent than our teens or our 20-year-olds. And so we have to hold on to that. We have to acknowledge how hard it is, but we can also hold on to that hope as well.
I think one of the hardest things for me is watching over the years how the whole sleep pattern and lack of sleep and having no control over sleep has impacted on so much, especially for my boys with sports, that real rugby players loved rugby, and it was such a brilliant release for them. And then to the point where, you know, physically not able to manage it, or then, you know, get to sleep 3 hours before it's meant to start and not able to go. A few months ago, one of my boys, we were kind of in the middle of about a 20-odd hour spell away, and he was getting really frustrated because he desperately wanted to go to sleep and he couldn't go to sleep. And I watched it dawn on him before he then verbalized it, and he said, How will I do a job?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I felt sick.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, well, you will, because we'll get the right shift pattern to match what you need. So that's not an issue. But that was then me awake for the rest of the night with a knot in my stomach thinking, oh, how do I create him a job? How do I create jobs for them? So that, you know, it's not a case of, it's got nothing to do with money and thinking, you know, how do I create an income for them? It's they're brilliantly clever kids who are unable, the potential is massive, but they're unable to tap into it because the only systems that allow them to tap into those exams and do them at this time, they can't fit into that system. So they're on the outside of it. And it's just, I think it takes you at the moment, like I wasn't expecting to have a moment like that in the middle of the night with him at 14 about, what about when I get a job? What if I can't wake up for a job? You know, and it's being faced, because quite often at the same time it's hitting them, it's hitting you, but you've got to come up with a response that doesn't trigger anything, that tries to keep the adrenaline as far down the scale as possible. And it's really, really hard. Because the thing is, I do know with absolute certainty that it will work out for them in the way that it's meant to work out for them, because, you know, there are so many of our peers who we went to school with who will have had FASD that whole time, and yeah, life might have been really tricky for them, but they will manage and they will find their path in life. It's just the uncertainty, especially when you're surrounded by like fellow mothers of kids the same age as you, who you befriended at school, and when they're small, it's so much easier. It's getting provisional driving licenses, it's starting driving lessons, it's getting cars, it's looking at universities, it's doing exams, and you just don't belong of that anymore. You know, and my kids probably think, oh, thank God we don't belong with any of that, we're not ready for that. But me, it does make me really sad that, you know, you're so happy for the people around you with children the same age as you, when it's like, oh, passed the driving test, got a car, got the place to uni, and you think, oh, it's dead exciting and they're about to start their lives. But you would be lying if you said that it didn't break your heart at the same time, thinking like, oh, what's our path going to look like? And I think it's the unknown, isn't it? You know that it'll be filled with wonderful moments, just the same as a neurotypical young person's life who's going off on the driving tests, university path, they will have downsides as well as all the wonderful bits. So it balances itself out. It's just, I think with us, we have got even more of the unknown, haven't we? Nobody knows how things are going to pan out. What we do know is that our roller coaster is going off on a completely different path. And that's about as much as we know. We don't know if it's going to be, we don't know if it's a water ride. We don't know if it's going to be dark. We have absolutely no idea what's coming. And we've got to be prepared for all of it.
And we have to sleep at night. How do we do that?
I will probably have to get away. So probably another 10 minutes because text messages.
Oh yeah, it's that kind of day. Okay, so how should we wrap this up then? Where should we go from here? We've talked about the grief. We've talked about, Natalie, any ideas where we go from here?
Well, I was on hope. You know me.
Yeah, let's go on hope. Okay, let's go there. So Natalie, what's our hope takeaway for this episode?
I think our hope takeaway can be that we're giving each other hope takeaways. Robbie, you give me hope takeaway in the celebrations that you're having with your older daughter and knowing what you went through with your older daughter. That gives me a hope takeaway saying, even if the road gets very dark, it can still come back to being light. Claire, my hope takeaway that I'm getting from you is that even when you don't think you have any more strength for this journey, you do. It's just, you got to dig deep and get it. And then when you find it, you're like, yeah, I still have some. So my hope takeaway is I'm getting hope from you both, because you both are on the same roller coaster, water ride, knife throwing experiment. I don't know. Some days it's like all at once. But again, I find hope in you all. And I know Jessica's not here, but when Jessica's here, you all give me hope because you give me this tribe and this safe place that I can go to and say, hey, I've had a really rough night. Let me tell you why. And no judgment, And I think that maybe for anyone listening out there, find your tribe. We've said it before, because I think your tribe can give you hope, especially when you don't know where you're going to get it.
We need community, and the community has to be living a similar life, because like Claire was just saying, if our community were the friends that we made 10 years ago with the moms on the playground, our lives don't match up anymore. And it feels devastating. You celebrate with them the growth of their children and the new skills they're acquiring. And then we look at ours, and ours are also developing new skills and new abilities, but different. And our paths look very different. And so now that where my kids are, and for many years now, I have changed who it is I spend time with. And my friends are exclusively parents who are raising children with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder and trauma. I have acquaintances and people I love, like in my family and stuff. I have people I know and I love, but that's not who I spend my time with. And that's not who I text when I'm heartbroken. Who I text when I'm heartbroken is my mom group or Natalie. Natalie and I have also become friends, and
Robbie has the green heart. I have the purple heart.
Yeah.
So I know when Robbie green hearts me, it's Robbie, and I purple heart. It's
yeah. Because we can't do this alone. And it's not just talking to other parents who are raising children with FASD. It's talking to the parents who are raising children with FASD, who have a brain-based approach and who are looking at creative ways of moving forward. If people are not willing to learn or not able to learn and they're stuck in that negativity, I can't be there. I will lose my mental health and I will lose hope. I have to be with people who also believe that there's hope and who also know that when we meet our kids with a brain-based approach, with trauma-informed attachment care, then we can really change things in our family life, and we give our kids the space and the grace to grow.
Oh, I love that, Robbie. Space and grace. I love that. It
just came there. It just fell out.
I think it's so important what you touched on, Robbie, that we need to if any parents or caregivers listening to this who are struggling, the most important thing you can do for your kids is to surround yourself with the right people. And those people need to be in the arena with you. They need to understand what you're up against, what you're trying to achieve, what you've got to achieve that, you know, what tools you've got, and otherwise they can't, with all the best will in the world, they can't help you in a way that you need to be helped. And I think what my little hurricane season this year has taught me is I absolutely can change things for my kids. And 4 or 5 years ago, I didn't believe that was possible at all. I can change the way their lives are going to go, and I have proven that to myself. And it has filled me with such excitement to think that if I just keep going, keep putting this hard slog in, keep being consistent. And I'm not saying I get it right, I get it wrong more than I get it right still, but I'm always coming from the same angle. And I think that's really filled me with a massive amount of hope. And I am a pretty hopeful, optimistic, positive person anyway, but this is really, and I think it's given us a bit of a lovely surprise. And it's always lovely to be surprised in a good way and say, oh, wow, look what you've done. Look what's happening. And to think, imagine what it can look like next year and the year after and the year after. And it's just lovely for that not to be daunting. And I genuinely, it doesn't feel daunting, because I think if I've survived 100% of what's happened up till now, I'm not really scared of anything anymore. And
I'm just excited going, exactly. I think what this teaches us too, so when we understand FASD broadly, and then our kids specifically, and then we get these experiences of, oh, I'm learning and I'm doing and I'm creating the right environment, and now my kids are flourishing. That also gives us confidence. So when the next plot twist happens, I've got this. I've got the skills, and I have people I can ask. I don't have to be perfect, and I don't have to know everything. I can ask, hey, Natalie, you know, where did you look for work? What worked for you? What were the setups? Claire, what worked for you at school? What were the setups? You know, how did you advocate for your daughter at school? And we can learn from one another, but we can also trust ourselves in the skills we've developed.
Definitely.
And so all the moms, dads, care workers that are listening to us, keep going. All these baby steps you're taking and all these small wins and the failures, we learn a lot from our own failures. All these baby steps we're taking in time, and I mean in a lot of time, we can look back over our shoulder and go, oh my gosh, look where we've come from. Look how far we've come. That's my hope takeaway. Thank you both for being here with me and encouraging my mother's heart that gets a little gloomy some days, but is mostly filled with hope and optimism. Thank you for being here with me.
Thank you, Robbie.
Thank you so much.